investors who have already invested in Pakistan to come back and enter the field of the CNG stations. So, as I said, looking from the perspective of an investor or a private party, I would use the phrase that the early bird gets the worm. So I want to be the early bird to catch this worm, so that if any early entrant at this stage would be able to secure contracts with good potential customers for the benefit of their business. The drivers for the LNG business are all showing a positive trend, starting with the escalating demand, as we have seen already established. And most of my respected speakers have already established that the demand will always be there. Considering that a country of 240 million people is increasing at a rate of 2.5% every year. So we have the consumers are there. The consumers are there, and they are in need of energy. Energy security is also an essential part of the growth of a country. If you have issues with the energy availability, you forget about the industrial growth of a country. So we need to address that. We are talking about energy security. When LNG Flex talks about the energy security, we are talking about small and medium-sized industry, which is much more in number in the as compared to the larger industry in Pakistan. So virtual LNG network can actually address some of the energy security issues being faced by these consumers. The flexibility and the scalability I've already discussed. Environmental consideration, being it is a fossil fuel, it is a pollutant, but it is the least polluting gas, which is compared to its peers like diesel and other fossil fuels, coal included. Affordability, of course, I would like to remind you, or I'd like to refer back to my earlier slide about the premises that we have mentioned, that the affordability of the price is, of course, a factor. But when there is a need, there's a demand, and the people would pay a certain price for for taking energy in form of the virtual LNG. So how does it all work? It's very simple. There are actually two models. That the main thing is that you have an ISO tank, which is the main component of the supply chain. This ISO tank can be filled at a filling facility available near to Pakistan, or it can be filled locally at a local terminal. The problem with that we believe with the filling of ISO tank containers is basically abroad, means the nearest country that is in the reach of Pakistan is Malaysia, but it still takes 14 days for a ship to arrive in Pakistan from Malaysia. So in order to keep a robust and secure supply chain, a rolling stock or the fleet of ISO tanks has to be massive. Considering also that there are only very few terminals which are filling ISO tanks, these are already booked for other customers. So maybe, like as in the supply chain where there are certain factors which are not in your control, in the control of somebody else, then you cannot guarantee the efficiency of the supply chain. And I think that is a big risk of having ISO tanks filled at a facility outside Pakistan. But insourcing would allow us to have our own storage. This storage can be used to buffer the travel of the LNGC, and will have an uninterrupted supply through ISO tanks to the end users. We have two options available for a terminal. The terminal could be an onshore terminal, but it involves a lot of capex because development, port development, uh, charges, the dredging that is required to bring in LNGC. So a lot of capex is required to implement the project, but the lifetime of the project, life cycle of the project actually justifies this cost. At the same time, the port infrastructure is of essence of importance, and I remember hearing one of my colleagues over here that the port should also look into their own development. The port development has been, like stagnant for so many years now, and no new terminals of any product are not coming in. So port needs to, they earn a lot of revenue, but their revenue is not showing up in their development. They should, focus more, and they are a key player in all of this game. If they are not there, then the investors would probably shy away because of the huge investments needed to be made, and that needs to be addressed. The other option is that we have an offshore terminal from where we can, bring in a ship which is offshore and fill the tanks and bring them over to the on-land side. But the problem with both of the main advantage of the port infrastructure is that it is 24/7, 365 days ensured operation, because it is a protected location, sheltered waters. But if you go in the offshore location, depending upon how far it is, the operation in for 3 months of the year, like August, September, and October of the monsoon, that may affect the continuation of the operation of loading or unloading the LNGC. I will come to a very important slide that we just mentioned about filling of LNGC either offshore, like I mean in Malaysia, and of another option of filling the ISO tank in source, which is within Pakistan. If you see that there is a capacity of the ISO tank to hold the refrigerated LNG for a certain number of days. And according to our data, which has been collected from the main suppliers of the equipment, that the main capacity or the main duration or holding time of a tank is about 120 days at 40-degree ambient temperature. If you look at the total steps that are required to bring in a pre-filled ISO tank, it requires at the end of the chain where the ISO tank actually lands in Pakistan, we have only 92 days to dispatch or dispose of that LNG. However, if we have an internal filling facility, in-source facility, it would allow us 110 days of margin to dispose of that LNG into the market. I will quickly what is required to establish this virtual LNG network in Pakistan? And I will not dwell into this slide too long, because much has been said about the licenses and the NOCs. This is an absolutely very long list, and we are facing that because we have recently acquired an RLNG terminal of Mitsubishi Tabi terminal, which is located in PQA. We are in the final process of that. And we have actually seen the time that has been taken for the issuance of these NOCs and licenses. And the list of these licenses is never ending. And all of these have their expiry date. The expiry date is like every year it has to be renewed. It has to be renewed well, knowing fully well that the project timeline is about 4 years. Coming to challenges, the VLNG is again, it is something new for us. It's not a new thing for the probably countries like China, India, and some other countries, but in Pakistan, it is considered as a new animal, which we need to understand that how it would react, how it would work over here. So that is one thing, that we do not have residual or you can say in-house expertise to correctly predict that how the system would work in the present given infrastructure available in the country. It will come out once the project starts rolling. The growth constraints are by high prices of gas, which these days is not there. But if the prices go like haywire, like $70 MMBTU, then of course it is a no-no. Other challenges are more technical. The small ships are not available, and the larger ships transfer of LNG product to a smaller ship is always an operational difficulty. And again, the matters like BOG handling and the transfer rates they hamper, and the time at the port would definitely be increased, although the volumes are lesser. Pakistan has not imported a single ISO LNG container so far, but we heard that we are in a process, and probably very soon we'll be seeing something coming out. But these are imported pre-filled ISO tank containers. Pakistan market is not accustomed to long-term lock-in arrangement. This is another issue. We are our customers do not want to have a long-term contract signed for the supply of LNG. I don't know, means they probably fear that that if they lock in a price and the LNG goes down, they will still have to pay that price. So we need to overcome that fear of the LNG suppliers. Affordability, I have already mentioned that so many times during my talk. The other thing is the capability of the party which is bringing in the VLNG to Pakistan as a business. As I said, that it is something new for us. There is no resident knowledge. Although we do have some FSRUs, or two business of FSRUs as an experience. But while talking to some of my colleagues over there, it is a big issue to find the right resources for executing the project management, commercial and technical, logistical and financial issues that are associated with the project development. And we are heavily dependent upon the external resources which come at a cost. So, but again, we should enter into this phase and then see the development also on this side coming up. My last slide is basically is a mitigation risk mitigation matrix. I will just take up only a couple of minutes on this. The gas price, if we look at the uncertainty and look at the gas price. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, as I said, that at a certain level, this becomes unfeasible. So there is no mitigation. There are certain gas prices that we have to peg, and we have said that our premise is that $85 Brent at per barrel price is something that will be okay for the business. But then again, the situations like where the prices are way due to world economic conditions or the situation, we may have a price range where the business may not be feasible anymore. I will talk about the what if the state LNG transmission distribution system becomes efficient. It's a dream, by the way. I hope that it happens. It requires a lot of effort by them. But if it happens, even if it happens, only 28% of our population or are connected to that. What about the rest of the 72%? They become efficient, 28% become happy. What about the 72%? They are still without gas. So that is the mitigation in this case is not required. It's already there. The demand destruction, another one is the demand destruction. I think if I refer to all the other presentations that have been made before me and the ones that I have already shown you, the demand will always be there. There is no question the demand would fade away with the projected deficit of 4.2 BCF in 2030. Safety, well, we have LNG network, LPG network already operating on the roads in Pakistan. Being liquid fuels, LPG is more dangerous compared to LNG. So I think in that respect, we have also contributed, by the way, towards a safety request, contribution to a safety information sharing with the government agencies. And I think that LPG, the network or the safety regulations that are available for the LPG transportation by road will cover the LNG transportation system as well. Thank you very much.
Zia sir, thank you, and we wish you the best with both of your projects, Tabir and LNG Flex, and hope to see them online soon, inshallah. Now we have Mr. Munib Zia. Mr. Munib Zia is a leading corporate lawyer and a regulatory expert. He has been advising on the development of economic policy, law, and regulation for over 2 decades. He is often consulted by the federal government and international institutions such as the World Bank on legislative reforms. In the recent years, he extensively contributed to the development of TPA framework for gas pipelines and LNG terminals and transaction structure for direct LNG import by local industry. Topic for this presentation is market perspectives on LNG network framework. Please.
Yeah, आपको जो सर लगा रहा हूँ V2 वर्जन 2 ये वही है इधर से पॉइंट करेंगे
Just for your facilitation, इससे आप उधर
होने का
ये यहाँ से मिलकर होगा.
Thank you, Imran Saab. And I thank OGRA, Chairman OGRA in particular, Member Finance and Member Oil, and the entire OGRA team for giving me this opportunity to speak on this issue. And in particular, I congratulate OGRA on holding such a useful seminar. And I wish that this is the first in the series, because there are lots of important issues that were discussed by the earlier speakers in a very broad sense. And my humble understanding is that each of those subjects require a seminar in its own right. But that is when we reach that stage. My presentation is broadly some perspectives. And these perspectives relate to the market, if I may use this term. Although many would agree that presently the market is not developed in the country for LNG, or for that matter, even for gas as such. It is yet to develop. It is at a very nascent stage. But these perspectives are generally developed. They have been developed during certain regulatory development processes, of which I had a humble part to play, and some interactions with the market players, some entrepreneurs, some other business people who wish to enter, and some of them entered into this business. I start with giving you an overview of the gas structure, and I deliberately don't call it market structure. It's a gas structure and specific to LNG and gas, not other fuels. And I'll try to be quick, knowing that this is the last presentation before lunch. On this slide, you would see the sourcing of gas and LNG, the transportation, and then eventually consumption. two or three elements that I would like to highlight, which probably have been discussed in much greater detail by the earlier speakers. But they are just so important that need to be flagged again. One, if you could see at the top that the gas supply, indigenous gas supply in Pakistan is around 2.6 BCFD. Some of the other statistics would show 2.7, 2.9, but this is immaterial because we're not discussing as such hardcore numbers, just to give a reference point, just to get a sense that where we are in terms of indigenous supply. And at the bottom, you would see that the market demand is somewhere around 6.2. Some would say 6.4, some would say 6.6, but again, even if we treat 6.2 BCFD as the market demand today, not tomorrow, you can see there's a difference of more than 100%, which is the demand supply gap. Now that difference is being filled up by LNG, and to what extent? Let's look at that. On the left side, you would see there are two terminals that are supplying less than 1 BCFD of gas at this point of time. Less than 1 BCFD of gas. So put together, you are somewhere around probably 3.5 compared to the demand of 6.2. So that's where we are. I would just quickly pass through this slide, but with one note. And that note would be preceded by what Mr. Jokhio said in the morning and Mr. Imran Akhtar said in the morning, that there is a grave need, a dire need to look at the policy and regulatory framework again. In short, my only sense and very humble sense is that our LNG policy of 2011 is more transactional in nature than directional in nature, than of incentives, than of a future roadmap, than of a vision how to proceed further. So we have to look at it again, not in terms of only the constraints that were highlighted in the morning, and they were very valid constraints, but to see what are we going to offer to unlock the LNG potential. What are the areas that we need to see in terms of government's direction? Most of the investment will look at the policy at the first stage. And all that we find in the policy is that there is a bundled structure and there is an unbundled structure, and the tariffs are set by the private parties through negotiations and by SOEs through a published system, which will be approved by OGRA. There's much more than that that a policy should be providing. In terms of all the discussion that we had here today in the earlier sessions with respect to the options that are globally available, what is the policy saying? Just one broad line that there can be virtual network. But what about that? So it is extremely important for the policy of 2011 to be reviewed, to be revisited, and to be realigned if we need to have investment in this sector, particularly in the imported gas, and how we are going to incentivize it to come and play its useful role. And I would emphasize incentivize again. Quickly, many speakers highlighted the issue of multiple approvals. We have to look at it. I would not go deep into this slide, but there are 24 approvals. These are only the major ones that are highlighted on the screen. And the licensing process is very broadly mentioned, but we need to see both these aspects in tandem. The very internal licensing process of OGRA, and OGRA knows well that it sometimes takes more than 6 months to get a license. So this probably needs to be seen really in a very, very close manner, how we can shorten this process, how we can shorten it to a few days, not just 6 months. And then about the multiple approvals, what can be the solutions for multiple approvals? three speakers earlier highlighted that there are 2 dozen approvals, NOCs or licenses required. How can we expedite that? How can we kind of consolidate it? Could there be a desk in OGRA or in the government offices somewhere which plays a useful role in coordinating to obtaining these approvals, NOCs, or maybe doing it on ex post facto basis? So there are some ways to go about it, but this is an area which needs to be seen and addressed in due course. This slide would show you the current LNG supply chain in the country. And I'm pretty much sure that our fellow speakers from Engro and from PGPC would be able to dilate it further. And I know Pakistan LNG Limited is also represented today. But for me, what is important is to highlight a couple of aspects in the LNG supply chain of Pakistan. Many of us might be familiar that we presently have 2 terminals. And the one fact that I want to highlight with respect to the first terminal is that there is congestion. The capacity is fully used. Almost 100% is booked by the government. That's the first terminal. So is there a need for expansion? Certainly is. And I recall Anik Saab from Engro did mention about it, that the need for expansion in facilities is required. For any business to grow further on a pipeline model, the capacities in the terminals must grow either in the existing or in terms of new terminal. Now let's look at the second terminal. The case is somewhat more challenging there. If we look at the second terminal, we find out that, well, the technical capacity may be 750 units, out of which 600 units been booked by a state-owned enterprise. And out of those 600 units, it is difficult for me at times to spell out MMSCFD, so I'm going for the easier terminology, units. Out of the 600 units booked by the state-owned enterprises, almost half is being utilized, the other half is not. And not only that, there is some capacity still available in the terminal, which is locked, which cannot be used. So I see congestion into these 2 areas. This capacity is presently there, but the market cannot access this. And at this point of time, I'm reflecting upon the market perspectives based upon, as I said earlier, my interaction with a few business houses and entrepreneurs and some other processes. They're eager, they're keen. I know there are players in the market that wish to access this capacity and they're unable for whatever reasons. We need to dig out what, why this half of the terminal capacity, which is available, booked by state-owned enterprise, is not available to the market. I'm sure there would be reasons, but let's hear those reasons out and let's see if there can be solutions to those reasons. And why that's some unallocated capacity in the terminal cannot be given to the market. So these are few questions that I raised, and probably in the last session, or the open house or panel discussion, we might be able to find answers. At the bottom, you see where the LNG is going. It's going to a power plant in the south, a couple of power plants or more probably in the north, to general industry, and then there is a diverted category. This diverted category is the one which is hurting the SUI transporters the most. Now, what are the reasons behind this? Largely socio-economic reasons, where there is at times certain demand not raised by the power sector, and then that surplus RLNG, expensive RLNG, is diverted to protected sectors which get gas at a very low rate. This causes huge financial problem, not only for the transporters being the SUI companies, for the government itself. So all that risk, the financial risk and operational risk is directly or indirectly being concentrated in the SUI companies, the transporters, as well as the government. So we have to look at that. How can we offload that risk? How can we spread that risk to the private sector? So many speakers spoke before. So we may have further discussion on it, but cognizant of the time, I would move forward to the key challenges faced by the market in Pakistan. And I would again, for the sake of emphasis, highlight that there is no market at this point of time. I'm referring to market as people who are in the business, the very few people. To my understanding, there are only at this point of time 2 shippers in the market doing the gas transportation, private shippers in the market doing the gas transportation business. And those who are interested for the future, and there are not number of them who probably have gone to make an application to the regulator to give them permission and license to. Now let's look at that. Pipeline capacities, we'd like to hear from the SUI companies, are not available. So what do? We got a wonderful presentation from LNG Easy and LNG Flex. So there are alternate solutions available. Let's look at that. But whatever we have, as I said, there's spare capacity in the terminal. What do we do about it? And what about the 2 new terminals that have been planned and not built over 7 years? What are the reasons why they've not been built over 7 years? Let's try to find out answers. I wish that we know more from them, from those terminal builders, sponsors, that what are the issues? And I think they will reflect back to policy and regulation again. But pipeline capacity is there for the existing capacities and any future capacities in the terminal, not on a virtual basis, but conventional method. Let's look at the gas supply position. From 21 to 22, we are constantly going down. And if I recall correctly, Mr. Imran Akhtar told us today in the morning from some government data that probably somewhere around 2030 would be at 1 BCF in terms of local gas production. So if 2030 our demand is going to go to 9 BCFD and our local production is going to go down to 1.5 BCFD, look at imagine the situation. And at that point of time, where would be the energy demand and where would be the supply? So what is going to fill it? How we are going to fill it? Network expansion of the SUI companies, we'd like to hear from them. We are unclear. We don't know whether there'd be more pipes or not and what kind of pipes. And anybody who's going to plan into this business would like to know what are the existing capacities and what are going to be the future capacities of pipeline. Other factors, the market really very strongly feels that they experience a very harsh anti-competitive behavior from the existing monopolies, with all due respect. The capacities are not ordinarily allocated. It is not very conducive to engage with the transporters and get their pipeline capacities. They have fear of loss of good customers. And that fear is so strong. And I hope that I can see representatives from the SUI companies here. They will probably help us in understanding it more. Why the SUI companies fear the loss of good or large consumers. This is going to happen. It will eventually happen. If not today, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, day after. But this is going to happen. You cannot go ahead into the future with only 1.5 BCFD of local supply and the demand growing beyond 9 BCFD. Financial losses, I already mentioned. We know there are lots of financial losses because of the way in which presently the LNG business is managed in the state-owned sector. Terminal capacity constraints we just discussed, so let's move ahead. Well, there may be constraints and there may be challenges, but they say there's always an opportunity in a challenge. And what are those opportunities? In a way, they reflect the constraints, they reflect the challenges, but yes, there are opportunities. Gas demand, we know that demand, and LNG Flex just highlighted it. It's going to grow. There's no way this demand is going to go down. So it will be there. And the supply demand gap is going to increase forever. Infrastructure, we need more terminals. We need the virtual framework. LNG Easy was so right that you cannot go on building pipelines in the whole of the country. Nobody can do that. That kind of infrastructure is probably impractical, unfeasible, given the Pakistan's economic background and situation at present. So you have to rely upon. And one speaker, Mr. Iqbal Zaid Ahmed, who runs the second terminal, very validly said, that leave it to the private sector. You just regulate, you just give policy. Let them take the risk. Let them build this infrastructure. So there we have the opportunity of the alternate system of virtual network. Small scale regasification units, we heard in the previous slides, are the solutions, and where liquid is going up to the end user's gate, and there it is used either by converting into gas or by a replacement fuel. Storage facilities, there's a lot of room for storage facilities. More importantly, at this point of time, the business is concentrated into the hands of state-owned enterprises. I'm not critical of state-owned enterprises, but there are issues. That's blocking the way of private sector development. The monopoly level, whether physical, whether operational, de facto or de jure, whatever you may call it, we may like it or not, but it is there and it is blocking the way. Mr. Ansar from Energas gave us a very good example from UK. The case was same there. They came out of it. They experienced it. And probably in the beginning, they had some dip in their work, in their revenues, but eventually the sector, they grew, the market developed, and then you had new players. And that's the whole point. At this point of time, when there is demand going down from the power sector, where does the LNG go? Per force it goes, it is diverted to those sectors which are protected sectors, from where the financial gaps come in, losses are caused. But if you have a developed market where there are multiple players, there are intermediaries, there are sellers, wholesalers, resellers, that diversion need not necessarily go to the protected sectors or from where the revenue loss is caused. It can go to on a better terms to other players in the market. So we need intermediaries, we need wholesalers, we need demand aggregators, and there's so many options for these players and these opportunities from the private sector. I try to be quick, knowing, as I said, that I'm the last presentation before lunch. So that is it. Thank you very much. The rest we will wait until the panel discussion.
Thank you, Munib sir. So we'll resume the seminar at, let's say, 2:15. And we request you to join us for lunch, please. From PSO, we have Mr. Raja Faisal, General Manager, Gaseous Fuels. Mr. Raja has over 20 years of experience in the oil and gas field. He's working at various positions in retail sales, aviation, and marine business. Since the last 3 years, he's working as General Manager, Gaseous Fuels at PSO and is looking after the LNG and LPG business. The topic for this presentation is understanding global LNG trading and contracting strategies. Please.
तो यहाँ पे वो लगा दे तो इसको
Okay, जी। अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी।
ये सिर्फ मैनुअली होगा वहाँ के लिए
Okay. Respected Chairman साहब जी, DG साहब, gentlemen and ladies, Assalamu alaikum. The topic here is a bit mostly towards contracting strategies. Mainly, majority of our slides have been covered by the earlier presenters. And mashallah, the whole room is much more experienced and knowledgeable about the LNG business. I'll not take much of your time and move. What areas would I be covering? First of all, I had the global LNG trade brief, then supply additions. These have been covered, and I will skip these. This is one step that I would like you to look at. This is how the supplies will increase yearly. As you can see, there's a 50% increase from 401 MTPA to about 600 MTPA over the next 5 years. So there will be a supply increase, which majority people say that will result in a price decrease. But if you look at the contracting strategies of the people who are trying to put this money in, they would have sold the upcoming supplies already. So this question, whether this supply glut will take the price down, remains to be seen, and this is something to think about. Mainly whenever supplier like Qatar Energy or US starts investing, they look at the fact that they need to close before the FID. They would be selling more than 80% of their supply source for long-term agreements, leaving only about 15 to 20% to spot or short-term sale agreements. What they want to do is to commit all available LNG production capacity. They would like to have reliable and creditworthy off-takers which don't renege on their committed delivery schedules, and majority of time they are take-or-pay or guaranteed contracts. Then they would also like to have partnership with trading giants, houses like Gunvor or Trafigura, wherein that short-term supply source is also sorted, wherein they have the experience of selling it to the short-term market. Then they, over the project cycle, the finance people understand that they try to cover their 100% investment with that 80% sales volume and leave the rest for the other short-term business. They also like to have limited destination and volume consistency so that a certain period goes down. As earlier presented by a few gentlemen, it is a running business. Gas is being produced, it is being liquefied, it is being shipped. If any break throughout that setup, somebody comes in and says, I don't want a cargo, that cargo has to go somewhere. And majority of the times, even the short-term sales contracts are done 45 to 60 days before a cargo starts to move. Then in the last, obviously a legal framework and governing contract. On the other side, the buyer, somebody like us, when he goes in and has to have a long-term contract, what is he looking at? He's looking at, first of all, a reliable supplier, because if he's planning some business or something, like we wanted to produce power from our LNG, so we wanted to have committed take-or-pay relationships with our power producers. Then a competitive price. Obviously, whenever you're going, you need to shop around, get the best price line. Mainly, the issue remains the baseline demand requirement. You need to be very, very authentic and clear about the number. How much do you want and how much are you willing to use throughout your system? If that number fluctuates, all of that long-term contract starts to shake. Again, I'm saying the same thing, the reliability of demand forecast. the infrastructure capacity in the country to handle it or in the setup to handle it, and a reliable legal framework contract. So these are both sides, the buyer and the seller, wherein these sides are covered, and that is how the business goes around. Again, majority contracts, you have SPAs. SPAs is a single document. There's no set format for it, but majority of the times internationally, the SPAs cover term, transportation, volume, take or pay, diversion, price, and then the technical specifications, the specifications of the ship, the specifications of the jetty. So the port constraint side, the ship, the handling side, and then the diversion or take or pay positions, that are the main items of an SPA. Again, I'm coming the currency process. These are main areas that are covered, which I think you guys would know how to do a contract or whatever is done with the LNG business. These are the main areas. Then on the other hand, when you come towards a shorter term contract, generically when you have traders or you have a shorter term contract, then you go for a master sales purchase agreement, wherein the timing of the ship and the price is not finalized. You have a generic contract. You are settled the main terms like quality, performance, those are covered. But the price and the timing of the ship and the size of the ship, that is covered in a separate confirmation notice or a confirmation memorandum, which is signed separately. This can be a longer term, but majority it is used generally by traders and short-term suppliers for the purpose of different spot tendering or other businesses. This is a small list, not exhaustive, but something that you need to decide what do you want. You want a longer term contract or you want a shorter term contract. You have to be very clear on how much supply security is of importance. If supply security is important, then you need to have a long-term contract and you need to have a contract with a producer rather than going with a trader. As the market, which you saw earlier in Pakistan as well, has been, when it becomes volatile, the traders tend to shift their interest towards finances and towards money. Then how important is volume flexibility? Again, coming back to the demand forecast numbers, if you're sure about a certain number, then you know how much do you want and you can settle that. Again, willingness and ability for supply procurement office, volume risk. Sometimes you see gas production is a 12-month business. Your supply can be very high in summer and very high in winter, but then the shoulder months create a problem for you. You need to sort yourself out throughout the year so that you have a certain continuous source of supplies. And then what is the buyer's price risk? Sometimes if you wait for the spot market and the spot market leaves to about $70, then you are left out. And the longer term contract will always help you in keeping the price intact. Small delivery terms, which I think is understandable for everybody. FOB, CFR, CIF, these exist in all kinds of businesses. The only thing different probably is DES, which is done in LNG business, which is the quantity that is left by the ship when it leaves, which is majority of, I think 40 to 50% of the contracts are DES based because people like to keep confirmed supply sources. Lastly, again, in our area, in Southeast Asia, the agreements are Brent oil linked. And internationally, you've got, in North America, you've got Henry Hub price linked. Henry Hub is the price of natural gas in the US. This is a generic trend. We tend to follow in our area the Brent oil systems. And majority of the contracts, as you can see here, in 2021, the main contracts were done in the US and they are Henry Hub based. But if you go towards 2023, the South Asian or Asian contracts are majorly Brent oil linked. And then there you have spot. I think this is it. Thank you very much. And I hope I was of some help. I thank Imran Akhtar Saab and Ogra for organizing such a great setup, and good to see all and people attached with the LNG business. Thank you, Ji.
बहुत शुक्रिया राजेश साहब. Now we have PLL. Mr. Ahmed Rashid from PLL. He's the head of LNG procurement. He's a mechanical engineer and a master's degree in project management. Then we have Mr. Yusuf Inam. He's the head of sales and business development at PLL. I'll invite them to kindly give the presentation. The topic is, बल्कि आप टॉपिक खुद बताइए आके, please.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thanks Imran Saab, and thanks to the authority, Chairman Saab and the members of the authority. It's our pleasure to be here, me and Yusuf. So on PLL's behalf, I'd like to talk about the LNG price benchmarks. Although PSO has already covered this topic, I'll quickly go through this. Yeah. So we'll talk about LNG price benchmarks, the global LNG price benchmarks, the factors influencing them, and then we'll talk about the risks associated with the LNG procurement and how to mitigate those risks. So first thing, yeah. So LNG price benchmarks. So mainly LNG is sold and purchased in dollar per MMBTU basis. Back in 1970, when LNG trade started, so it started with dollar per MMBTU, and then when Japan came into this import of LNG, they basically replaced their oil after the oil shock. They replaced their dependency with LNG on oil. So they introduced, so oil-based pricing got introduced in 1970s and 80s. So basically, example is written right there. So you link your LNG price with Brent. For example, our LNG is also linked with Brent, 3 months average Brent multiplied by slope. So that's the Brent linkage basically. And later on, when we saw US-based LNG come into the market, now we see a lot of long-term contracts based on Henry Hub as well. So Henry Hub is a US-based natural gas price index, and then you have to load it with the transportation and liquefaction cost to convert into the long-term price of LNG. So the connection here is that in 2022, when US contracts were more, then we saw Henry Hub-based pricing more. And in 2023, we saw a lot of Qatari contracts, and Qatar usually prefers Brent-based pricing. And then, so these were the long-term contract pricing, oil-based or Henry Hub gas-based. And then we have a spot market as well for LNG. So that is basically boils down to dollar per MMBTU, and that really changes every day. So spot means spot. So whatever the price of today is, that is available for only today. Tomorrow there can be a different price. So moving forward, yeah. So we'll see how these benchmarks have been behaving for the past 3-4 years, and it has been really a roller coaster ride during the past 4 years. We've seen $2 as well. We've seen $80 as well of spot price. So that's the JKM on the left-hand side of your the screen. JKM went to 80 above dollar in 2022, and Pakistan, as PLL, we've also purchased LNG at $2 as well, and we've also purchased LNG, spot LNG at $30 as well. So now in 2024, the situation is has quite become normal because the 2022 era was when the Russia-Ukraine conflict kicked in, and Europe had to shift from Russian gas to LNG. So almost 45 MTPA year-on-year change was observed in import of LNG by Europe. So on the right-hand side of the screen, let's focus on where the prices will be. This is the forecast, latest forecast by Platts as of May 13th. So we can see that JKM and TTF, they behave quite, quite similarly, in a similar manner, because they represent the spot market of LNG. The brown line Henry Hub, it only represents the natural gas price in US. It does not represents LNG. And in the coming years, as per the forecast, it seems that spot price will become favorable as compared to oil-based index price. Yeah. So moving on, so what are the factors that influence these LNG prices, long-term or short-term? We'll talk about this on this slide. So the one thing that is the fundamental factor is the demand-supply gap. So if demand is more, supply is not meeting the demand, then obviously price will be higher. And if the demand-supply gap is less and the supply is more, the market becomes buyer's market, the prices are then favorable. They're quite less. So let's see, as per Shell LNG outlook, let's see what were the last year's demand factors, which eventually navigated the pricing as shown in the right graph. So there were mild winters across Europe. Europe did not buy as much as LNG, so that's why, as compared to 2022, the prices were very mild and modest Chinese economic recovery. So China, I have a bonus slide here. I'll talk about China some more because Chinese economic recovery really drives the prices for LNG. So they are the largest importer of LNG. So their behavior actually dictates where prices will be. And weak European demand and energy savings, we've already talked about that. So let's focus on the right side of the screen where we see the average monthly JKM prices. The earlier graph was the daily prices of JKM, which showed $80 above in 2022. So this is the monthly JKM prices. The range from 2016 to 2020, it has been below $10, the range throughout the year. Interestingly, in late 2021, because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the prices started to become increasing above $20 per MMBTU. And then year round 2022, the prices have been above 20, and we have seen prices above average monthly prices above $40 as well. So these are the spot prices which were mainly dependent on the demand supply gap. Sorry. Yeah. So I was talking about this graph. So monthly JKM prices, average monthly JKM prices. So we've seen again a roller coaster ride during 2022. And now the prices have become below $20. They're at, as of today, they're at $12 per MMBTU. So moving on. So this was about the spot LNG. The next slide, this one is about the long-term LNG prices, how those are, navigated and how those are maneuvered. Before we dig into these graphs, I'd like to share the latest development in the LNG industry. We've seen a long-term contract in February, Qatar Energy and India's Petronet. It was priced at around 12% of Brent. So the prices have been in 2022 and 2023, prices have been at above almost 14%. So now, because again, as we see, the spot prices have all decreased as well. So now the market is quite easy. So the prices are also coming down. Supply is sufficient. And as of 4th of June, S&P Platts reported that oil-linked long-term LNG contract prices to continue to fall in buyer's market. So the left-hand side graph shows that Sorry about this. So the left-hand side graph shows that the supply is increasing and a lot of supply is going to come online in 2026, which means that the demand is lesser than the supply. So that is why we are entering into the buyer's market. We were in the seller's market in 2022, 2023. We as PLL even tried to float a tender and we tried to sign a long-term contract, but we could not attract a bid because there were no suppliers ready to deliver LNG in 2023 or 2024. All the new LNG that is going to come online, it is available from 2026 onwards. Yeah, before moving on, I'd like to take you back to this graph, which shows the spot prices. Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to take you back to this graph. The left-hand side, please focus on the left-hand side of this graph. So spot prices, JKM, they have been on $80 per MMBTU. So as a state-owned company, we had to follow public procurement rules. So there was a lot of challenges that we were facing in terms of the LNG procurement. So we had to follow the timeline of 30 days response time, and then we had to follow the 15 days bid validity timeline. So we were getting exemptions from public procurement rules to navigate from this roller coaster ride of LNG spot prices. And the recent achievement, and it's a good news that I'd like to share with all of the industry people here, that we have been able to convince the Public Procurement Authority to amend their procurement rules, the public PEPRA rules, to accommodate the dynamics of the LNG prices, the spot LNG prices. So now, as per Rule 21 of the PEPRA rules, they have now changed the PEPRA rules to accommodate the short timelines for spot LNG procurement. And I believe a lot of petroleum included in those PEPRA amendments. So moving on. So let's talk about risks associated with LNG procurement. We have seen supply disruptions as well. For example, due to operational reasons, there's a curtailment on LNG supply at some facilities that directly impacts on the spot prices. For example, a few days ago, there were some maintenances going on in US plants and in Australian plants. So they were directly affecting the LNG prices. So force majeure and shipping route blockage, they all drive the LNG procurement and LNG prices. For example, in 2021, the Suez Canal route was blocked because there was some vessel blocked in that channel of the Suez Canal. So one of the vessels carrying PLL's LNG cargo, it was stuck there as well. So we had to shift a lot of cargoes to accommodate that delay because of the blockage of Suez Canal. And also procurement, one of the risks associated with LNG procurement is the geopolitical risk. Curtailment of pipeline gas, for example, we've seen Europe, the pipeline gas was totally cut off by Russia, and Europe had to shift towards LNG imports. So these are the risks associated with LNG procurement because of these directly translate into pricing. And then country like us, when prices are above $20, then we start facing challenges. For example, regulatory changes last year in US, because there has been a lot of FIDs in relation to the new liquefaction facilities coming online in US. So last year there was some curtailment policy changes in the US administration. Because of that, we've seen some fear in the European market as well, because Europe now depends on LNG and then they see US as their LNG supplier. So let's see China's example. For example, what can you do when you're facing risks with LNG procurement, right? So based on my experience, the idea is not to have all the eggs in one basket. As an energy importing country, you must have other sources of imports as well. Yeah. Yeah, on the next slide, let's see this China's example. So in 2022, when the prices were record high, also obviously that affected Chinese market as well. So China had the option to increase their pipeline imports from Russia, increase their pipeline imports from Myanmar and Kazakhstan. And also they had the option to increase their indigenous gas reserves as well. So when you only depend on LNG imports and LNG market is crazy, then you don't have any other option. So what China did is exactly shown here. Their dependency on LNG became less, but the overall gas available within the system, it's been increasing. They've increased their local production of gas, they've increased their pipeline imports. And this is where I think spot market comes in. Because if you have 100% of the reliability on term cargoes, term imports, then you are not flexible enough. And I fully second Mr. Raja Faisal's comment that if you're certain about the demand, only then you enter into a long-term contract. The flexibility should remain on spot imports. So China had this option when prices were high, their dependency on LNG became lesser and lesser. So moving on, I like to quickly share this LNG terminal utilization slide as well. So left-hand side, we can see that the utilization percentage of the global LNG receiving terminals is almost at 40%. This means that these LNG terminals are strategically built. So whenever the prices are lower, you can increase your LNG imports. That's what China did. For example, in 2020, 2021, prices were favorable. Their economy was growing as well. So they increased their LNG imports. I'd like to show you a bonus slide as well on China. So the source of this slide is one of our suppliers, SOCAR. I got permission from SOCAR to share this with you. So this actually tells us that how big China is, how China can maneuver or dictate the market of LNG even. So their Chinese total energy demand in terawatt hours is almost 3,500 per month. And 3,500 means that only 440 terawatt hours per month are coming from natural gas. And natural gas is then further bifurcated into local, imported pipeline and imported LNG. So to keep up with the punchline is that to keep up with Chinese economic growth, you need to have 2 new Qatar fields every year discovered to meet up with Chinese demand. So I just wanted to share with you that this is how big Chinese energy is and how they can uh, create problems for us as well, and how they can create issues for the energy sector as well if their demand is not met on time. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Rashid Saab. We have a very respected personality here with us in the oil and gas sector, Mr. G.S. Abri. However, keeping in the constraints of the time, but still I will request G.S. Abri to give his insight for 5 minutes, please.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Before I start off for 5 minutes, my 5 minutes will trickle after my explanation. So I have just two submissions to make. एक वजाहत है और एक शिकवा है. वजाहत ये है कि कल मैंने वह देखा कि एमडी सुई एसएसडीसी उन्होंने कहा जी हमें फॉर्मल मीटिंग में सूट पहन के आना पड़ता है. तो मुझे नहीं पता था कि वैसे तो खैर इन्होंने इट इज एन ऑनर फॉर मी कि मैं आया किसी और काम से था और चेयरमैन साहब ने मुझे बुला लिया, तो वजाहत तो ये है कि इसलिए मैं सूट नहीं पहन रहा। और शिकवा सर इसलिए है कि रिटायरमेंट के बाद कभी कभी मौका मिलता है सूट पहनने का, तो वो आपने वो coming back to it, I will not, sorry, first of all, I just saw this topic just now, and I don't know about the audience, but I'll speak, and I have been speaking truth, whatever I feel. I may be wrong at the end of the day. Alhamdulillah, so far it has not turned out to be wrong. Neither will I touch the economics because I am out of touch. I don't have the numbers today. But my only thing is, okay, and again, I'll request a very, very personal pardon from everybody if they are any vendors or something like that. My only question is why LNG? You attended, sir, yesterday's seminar, and I'll come back to it. Somebody would just say, Kebi, you were a proponent of LNG in 2010 on the Mashal project. I'll tell you the book which I wrote over there, sir. It is on record. I started off saying the LNG, why am I supporting it? I had said I am opposing all the imports since long. Why am I supporting it? Any big discovery will take at least about 8 to 10 years period, gestation period. So that was the only reason and it is on record, sir. The book was published on 19th May 2013 when the then Iftikhar Chaudhary was still in his robes. I wrote his, having said that, anyway, that is history now. Coming back to this, the point is, sir, you would have noticed yesterday, if I remember the country correctly, you have to pardon me for that. I think it was Guyana. I don't know whether you were there or not at that point of time when somebody was giving a presentation on LNG. They said that they started off 50 years. Since 50 years, they had been drilling in offshore. And it was just about a couple of years back, again, my short memory, they found that, and now they are one of the biggest gas exporters in the world. Guyana, whatever it is, most probably that is the country. Having said that, and again, sir, most of people, Dr. Liaf was there yesterday throughout. He takes notes, very good notes. I'm sure. It was, and I have been always a proponent that Pakistan is full of energy. I'm not talking oil and gas, sir. I'm talking minerals, including everything. Pakistan is full of energy. We should exploit it. And again, yesterday, as people would have seen, we have just drilled 2 ultra deep wells. If you count the Shell one also, which we can say 3. The first one was drilled in by Total with the joint venture of Petronas, etc., etc. That was done in 2003. Unfortunately, that went dry hole. And I'll tell you, the closing, the OCM was taking place on a Saturday, and I was chairing that meeting in OJDC house. And there were 2 organizations. I don't mind sharing OJDC and this Mari Gas at that time. They said, "Kasan, Ajay, अच्छा ठीक है अच्छा sorry I thought कि what अच्छा जी चले तो coming back to sir after my retirement I retired in 2010 एक लाहौर में ट्रस्ट है तहजीबुल अखलाक ट्रस्ट this trust was formed by old leagues it's not a family trust it was formed by very very distinguished people of their time they were about 25. The first founding president was Mia Mohammad Shafi, who was of Rai clan, Bhagwanpur ke, he was head of the Rai clan, and he was the then chief. And so many people down the line, and my late father was one of the founding members. After my retirement, because of my attitude, I had to decide whether I should go back to the industry and keep begging कि यार ये काम कर दो or take up a social service. So I went in for a social service. I live in Islamabad. I traveled to Lahore and we are managing, there were a legal public school on Ghalib Road. It was established in 65. A legal public school on Manga Mandi, Multan Road, 66. That's a boarding. We have got about 2,000 students in Manga, about 1,000 students at Gulberg. And Manga has got boarding and it is one of the 4 or 5 schools which has boarding from class 1. We have got about 350 boarders. And my theme, the only theme which I added is creating national harmony. And the national harmony is bringing in students from all over the country. We have got about 172 plus from Balochistan, almost 95 from Waziristan and so on and so forth. This is what we are doing. It's an NPO. We are all honorary, the trustees are all honorary people. We don't charge anything. So, sir, I am very grateful to Chairman Saab and Member of Finance. They were there, they visited us. and he has showed his best, whatever. Naturally, being a government employee, I know the limitations, whatever he's done. But this is again, I thank you very much. It's an honor for inviting me and presenting my. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, GS Sabri Saab. Now I would like to invite Mr. Liaquat Ali Nehra Saab, GM Finance, SNGPL. He has a fellow of Cost and Management Accountant, master's degree in commercial law, as well as his master's in economics. He has over 25 years of experience in gas industry in the field of contract negotiations, in the gas supply chain, rules, policy formation, and in the field of TPA and gas pricing and regulations. His topic will be future of the state-owned regulated pipeline operation in liberal market, as well as the most important, the challenges to third-party access to natural gas pipelines controlled by SOEs. Please.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। जी, thank you Sajjad Sahab for such an elaborative introduction. Thank you Chairman Sahab and Member Oil, Member Gas, Member Finance for giving me the opportunity. My topic is about the challenges and future of state-owned regulated pipeline operations in the liberal market. So, although much has been discussed on the topic, my topic will consist of four segments. Number one, what is the market liberalization? Much has been discussed and by the distinguished speaker, earlier distinguished speakers on this topic, and I will skip this one. If forms of gas market liberalization, I will also like to skip this one, except one point on this slide, and that is regulated competition. Once the market is liberalized, normally the natural monopolies, the utilities are always regulated around the world. Even then there is competition. But in our example, in Pakistan market, we are over-regulated. And sometimes it becomes difficult to even breathe under such a heavily regulated environment. But with the introduction of TPA rules and network code, things are improving and we are going towards right direction. Mr. Ansar has already talked on this topic about the liberalization in the world, especially the British gas example. In Pakistan, the gas liberalization started in 2002 when OGRA ordinance was promulgated. And in the scope of the OGRA ordinance, OGRA has the mandate of liberalization of the market, and they started work on it in 2012. Because up to 2010, the SUI companies had exclusivity rights on their consumers, and these rights lapsed on 2010. In 2012, OGRA promulgated and notified the TPA rules. But these rules were not much elaborated. So with the help of World Bank team, these rules were rehashed and new rules were notified with. These were high-level rules, and with the help of World Bank consultants, Pakistan Gas Network Code, which is a standard document and is uniform for all the newcomers and shippers, and the contractual, it replaces the contractual arrangement. And once now, if any private party come to utilize the pipeline network of the gas utilities, they will only sign a 2-pager access agreement, and the Pakistan Gas Network Code will be attached with it has all provisions of the contractual arrangement in it. And after notification of these rules, the market started liberalizing. As of today, there are two players. One is Parker Fertilizer, to whom SNGPL is providing transportation services by utilizing our transmission network, and another company, UGDC, to whom we are providing the TPA services, who are providing gas to number of consumers in distribution network. Operationally, we don't see any problem. We were scared at early stage, but operationally we are not. We have not experienced much of the operational constraint, but due to some regulation, we are experiencing some commercial or financial constraints. Third-party access, a snapshot of third-party access I would like to explain is that the TPA arrangement has two types. There can be two types of arrangement: the interruptible service arrangement and the firm service arrangement. And it has the provision for the notification of tariff, and that is covered under Article 25 of the Pakistan Gas Network Code. Capacity allocation mechanism is